Right, guys, we'll start the webinar now. Thanks for joining in, everyone. I'm Captain Gaurav Rana, and I'm from Sea and Beyond. Along with me, I have Prateek and Smita, who are from Sea and Beyond and who will help me in conducting this webinar. And the speakers for today's webinar are Mr. Uttam, Mr. Sai Venkatesh, and Captain John Bosco. And thanks, Sai and Captain John for being here. I guess Uttam is just joining in a minute or so, but we should start. Um, Thanks once again, and we will be recording the webinar. We will share the recorded webinar and also the presentation at the end of the webinar to all of you. And Prateek, can you move to the next slide? Okay, so why are we doing this webinar? We're doing this webinar because, sustainability, vessel performance, optimization, emission control, a lot of these things are the buzzwords around. Not many people understand them. And even if many do, we're not sure whether they are sure about their understanding and how much in depth do they understand this. So through this webinar, our intention is to increase your awareness, provide you consolidated information from credible sources, and hence we have the experts who are essentially been practicing into this particular field for a few years, at least 4 to 5 years. So when you hear this webinar, you will be able to evaluate the relevance of the information you get, and you can take well-informed decisions. Those decisions could be your career related, those decisions could be professional knowledge related, but that's what can help you through, right? Speaking rights would be given to the presenters and the host. And what we will request is a few things to you guys. Please rename yourselves so that we can, whenever we talk to you, we understand at whom we are talking to. That's number one. Number two, if you have any questions, you may write in the chat window and we will take all the questions at the end. And try and make the questions a little bit generic in nature. We may not be able to take all very, very specific questions. Maybe for specific questions, we can connect at a later stage as well. So that's essentially our request to you. If you can move to the next slide, Prateek. All right. Let me have one poll at this point of time. Okay. And the poll is, before I introduce the presenters to you, maybe if I can have a quick presentation, a quick understanding of how the audience is. So Prateek, you can move to the next slide while everyone answers this poll. All right. We've got Uttam with us, and Uttam is the Director of IT Business Partnership and Synergy Marine Group, Singapore. He's a marine engineer and a technology leader. He sailed on vessels. He went to US to do his MBA, and then he joined Alphaori in US, and then he shifted to Singapore. And he's essentially been there in the new product development space, in the digital initiatives that Synergy Group has been taking through various products that they are building, through various partnerships that they are developing, and other things as well. Then I've got, next slide, please. Okay, I've got Sai with me as well. Sai is a naval architect. He's done that degree from IIT Kharagpur. And since then, he's been with Scorpio, GeoServe, and where he's been into vessel performance and optimization space. He's responsible for research, planning, and implementing new programs while overseeing the new product development as well. So that's Sai for us. Thanks for joining in, Sai. And to the next slide, Pratik. All right. We also have Captain John Bosco Mones with us. He's, of course, a master mariner, and he's done his MBA from SP Gen Global. He's done 16 years of sailing, 5 years as master. He joined in initially in the QHSC department as a marine superintendent. And then for the last 4 years, he's been spearheading the vessel routing performance department in Anglo Eastern. So he's over there. So we have a marine engineer, a master mariner, and a naval arc. So you can get a holistic overview about the entire ESG sustainability space as such. Thanks for joining in, Captain John. And I've given you an introduction about all of them, and let's see the audience. I'm ending the poll over here and sharing the results. So this is for everyone, and of course the presenters to know. We've got 37% of the audience who are sailing top four, 32% who are settled ashore after sailing, 17% who are sailing at an operations level, and 15% who have never went to sea. So that's the audience mix which we all have. We move to the next slide, please. And let me take this question on trying to understand what is, how much do you guys understand about sustainability? Is it at a very peripheral level, or you don't understand, or you have a fair bit of understanding and you would like to validate your understanding? So where do you guys stand? This would be the final poll before we move to Mr. Uttam, who would take the next slides then. All right. Yeah, I see about 80% people have voted. I'll wait for the next 3-4 seconds and then I'll close the poll. Okay. Interesting answers on the poll. About 41% know a bit, but they would like to know more. 28% have a fair bit of understanding and they want to validate. And about 15% each have not, I've heard a lot, but don't understand in detail. And a lot of them couldn't get a lot of information. So be rest assured, I think the kind of information that you're going to get in this webinar is actually not just the current, but also it shows the future. And you'll have some interesting screenshots, some interesting calculations for you to see. And yeah, I think I look forward to a great session over here. And we have Uttam with us. Uttam, over to you, please.
Hello, can you hear me, Gaurav?
Yeah, we can hear you.
First of all, sorry, I messed up with the time. Somehow it was, I had 5:30 in my mind as per the Singapore time. Sorry. So very nice. So thank you, Gaurav. So ESG, as Gaurav might have pointed out, ESG, we are going to talk about ESG in maritime industry today, and more specifically environmental aspect. So what is ESG? ESG stands for environmental, social responsibility, and governance. It is a framework to measure the impact of sustainability in the society, right? So you may ask, what is the sustainability mean, right? So recently I attended a conference where one of the speaker gave a very apt definition, and I would like to share. Sustainability is all about meeting the need for current generation without compromising the need for future generation. I think this is a very powerful statement and very apt for us today. So what we do today, it severely impacts the generation ahead of us, whether it's our children or children's children, right? So we must look at the ESG pillars very holistically, and that's why this ESG is very, very important. Environmental is all about how we can reduce the GHG emissions or carbon emissions, right? And meet the net zero target. So how we can keep the environmental clean. Social responsibility is all about the commitment to our society or community we live in. So recently, Mr. Ratan Tata died, right? He did not get that much respect because what he achieved. He got respect what he did for the society. So social responsibility is no more a good thing to do, but it's also make a lasting impact on this on our lives. Similarly, governance is all about how we run our business. Are we running it ethically? Are we running it with integrity? Are we taking accountability and running it transparency? So these are the three factors. These are very, very important in running our any businesses, right? And this is not good to have anymore. This is driven by different stakeholder, whether it's government, it's NGO, it's customer or customers and different stakeholders. So this and maritime industry is no more an exception anymore. So companies in maritime, they are here to, they need to make a long lasting impact. And how they can do it, they can do it by taking care of these three aspects. So the people who are at the on the vessel, they also need to participate in it. Employees who are working in this company, they need to participate in it, so that our reputations or the company's reputation are taken care of, not in terms of only reputations, but at also the financial level. So today, this ESG aspect is very, very critical in the business sense today. So that's why we are talking about ESG in maritime industry today. Next slide, please. So today's focus is mainly on environmental aspect. So we are not going to talk about social responsibility and governance. Maybe it may take another session altogether. So why is this environmental aspect critical? We all know 90% of the goods are still being carried by the ship. And it is still the cheapest and the most environmental conscious mode of transportation, but it still contributes around 3% of the emissions in the world. So what should we do today? Definitely there is an opportunity to make it further low, right? So that we can contribute to the global net zero target. So there are different ways we can do it. But before we go into the ways, what are the key drivers that can that are mandating this environmental aspect of the sustainability? uh, in my opinion, these are four aspects. Regulatory, uh, we all know that shipping is mainly driven by regulatory regulations for years, and it is not an exception today as well. IMO has come up with a mandate of CII ratings, and this the target for CII rating is further reducing by 10%. Then there are other regulatory authority like EU ETS, FEL, EU that are coming, so which are mandating that how we run our ships more efficiently. Second one is economical, or how there are opportunity to run our vessels more efficiently. So we running our vessel efficiently in terms of fuel consumptions? Are our machinery running efficiently or optimally? Are we maintaining our spare parts optimally? Is the logistic or supply chain optimal? So there are different ways that we can still make profit and take care of the environment. So this aspect is still possible today. The third one is, I think, the most critical, is the market pressure. So different lending companies like banks, they are giving subsidies to the companies or the ship owners to, in terms of if they are making more green or sustainable ships. Even the cargo owners are demanding green ships. So these are the drivers that are definitely helping to make the ships green and operate it in efficiently. And finally, the technology that we are talking today. So some of the technology we will talk today that are making sure that our ships are operating efficiently. At the same time, is what we can do today, and they may not be happening now, but there are different companies or startups or technology that are being tried out that can take that are pushing the boundary in terms of making sure the ships are environmental conscious and more efficient in future. We will take the questions towards the end, I think, Gaurav, right?
Correct, correct.
Okay, so role of digitalization. So being a technology person, I still see there are digitalization or technology plays a great role in terms of emissions and also taking care of the environment. So first one is the real-time data monitoring. This is not comprehensive. This is what I jotted down, but it is not limited to only this. So real-time data monitoring. Of course, in olden days or
अरे वो जीन्स मैंने दी हुई है 2-4 दिन से उधर.
sorry.
No, no, I think someone was talking.
Okay.
You may continue. Sorry, please go ahead.
Okay, so in the past, the way we used to do the data reporting, the ship operators or ship staffs report something, ship managers get some other information, ship owners get some other information, and charter used to get some other information, right? So there was a leakage around the data processing, around the value chain. So, but with the advent of IoT sensor data and the real-time sensor data collection, this is definitely taken care of, and it is very much important in not only terms of reporting to the authority, but also maintaining that transparency across the value chain. So this is only possible because of the new technology around IoT and the cloud computing happening here. The second one is the AI-enabled application. Now we collect the data, what we can do using different machine learning or AI technology in order to make sure that different applications are there to make the vessel more fuel efficient. So these are some of the applications that are prevalent in the market, and some of the will be talked by Captain and the other speakers today. So then digital twin technology is also there. What does this mean? It is a virtual model of the ship, so where you can do different simulation environment in order to predict the emissions in different scenario. And finally, the data tracking and the document management. So the things does not get lost in translation from one system to another. So blockchain definitely takes care of it. So these are some of the digitalization tool or applications that I mentioned it, but it is definitely not limited to this. Next slide, please. So what are the different components in environmental sustainability, right? I've listed it 4 on the right side, and which will be further taken out by different speakers today. But if you look at the pictures on the left-hand side, this tells a lot about that. What are the possibilities with us today? So like if the ships go fully electric, there is an opportunity to save 50 to 90% of the energy. If we do run our ships optimally, their voyage optimization can save 10% of the fuel or reduce emissions by 10%. Similarly, if we maintain our hull properly, there is an opportunity to save fuel or emissions by 10 to 20%. Of course, this will vary by different conditions, but there is opportunity. This is a very important graph that we should keep it in mind. So what are we going to talk? One is emissions monitoring and control. One thing we know that if we can't measure something, we cannot improve. So emissions monitoring is very critical to know what is our baseline today. So then only we can improve further. So IMO has given a target that we need to reduce our emissions by 40% in 2030 or 70% by 2050. It is still very ambitious target, but they have put it considering different stakeholders. So there are technology by keeping this baseline in mind and to help us reach there. Then energy saving devices. So there are still, you can run your vessel efficiently, but what are the additional devices that we can put on the ship to make the ship more efficient. So there are different technology that are being tried out or retrofitted in the ships, whether old ships or new ships, that are being taken care of to make the ships more energy efficient. And there are different measures by like EEDI or EEXI, which Sai will talk about, that how we can improve those KPIs there. And there are some technology like rotor sails, air lubrication system that can help enable us there to reach there as well. The bottom 2 points are more about how we can make our vessels more efficient operationally. So can we take care of our hull? Can we optimize the machinery operations in order to make sure that emissions is reduced or consumption of fuel by the ships are reduced by different machinery? Similarly, the weather routing is all about what is the best route considering different weather situations, and can we optimize our speed in order to reduce our emissions along the way. So these are some of the technology or the components that are being tried out or being very much prevalent. I mean, it's not tried out, I would say it is very much adopted by different companies or different vessels in order to reduce emissions. Next slide, please. So now I will hand it over to Sai to talk about emissions management. And so that's it from my side. But I will be happy to take any questions once the presentation is over. Over to you, Sai.
Thank you, Uttam. That has been very insightful. So today I'll just dive a little deeper into some of the points that Uttam has mentioned so far. So why would we need emission management or emission monitoring or all of these things? Well, it is because in order to bring about sustainability in the shipping industry, various regulators, regulatory bodies, administrations have come up with a lot of regulations over the past few years. And now, more prevalently, they're coming up with taxation schemes. On the regulatory aspect, for people who are sailing, you already know about IMO DCS and the EU MRV. And there's talk about there is a very high probability that more such regulations come in. And on the taxation part, again, the EU ETS emission trading scheme starts this year. And there is also a lot of talk about other countries like the United States and China coming up with their own taxation laws. So it becomes, now it has become a very concentrated, focused topic, because when it comes to taxation, it becomes something that gets attached with a dollar value and that directly impacts business. As Uttam rightly pointed out, this has all become imperative for the business and it's not just an option anymore. You have to do it. So I've broadly classified emission management into three aspects. One is the emission accounting, where there are regulations that you need to submit your vessel data for verification by different regulatory bodies. For IMO, there is the data collection system, DCS, and for the EU right now, there's the monitoring, reporting, and verification, where you have to submit your vessel's annual emission, consumption, and sailing data for it to be verified and then get further used for different things. For example, the IMO DCS data that is collected goes forward into calculating the CII, EEXI, things like that. So that becomes the start point of the regulatory aspect for the compliance aspect. And EUMRV, of course, goes into calculating your EU ETS and Fuel EU Maritime that's going to start next year. And then you have the compliance aspect, where there are things like the energy efficiency design index for existing ships, the CII, where your vessel has to comply or it impacts the tradability of your vessel. And from starting again from 2025, you have the Fuel EU Maritime coming in, where there's again a commercial aspect that is attached to it. And there are different stakeholders in the market that have come up with their own decarbonization targets. For example, Sea Cargo Charter, which is an voluntary signatory body between oil majors and charterers of the world. So if the vessel owner has a vessel chartered with one of the signatory bodies of Sea Cargo Charter, it is expected that the vessel meets the decarbonization targets. And Poseidon Principles is something that financial bodies have come up with in order to be able to promote sustainable shipping, green shipping, so that whenever a shipping company or ship owning company requires financing, the rating of the company based on the rating of the vessels gets assessed, and uh, the amount of finance or things like that, details like that get finalized based on how good your vessels are or how green your vessels are. Commercial exposure is something that directly impacts the P&L for any shipping company, be it an owner, be it a charterer, anyone who is involved. And in that, we already have the emission trading system from the EU, the EU ETS, which is started from 2024, fuel EU maritime that is starting from the next year. And broadly in the ESG space, in the sustainability space, there's something called carbon offsetting, where every company that emits carbon dioxide, even though it's not mandatory at the moment, but there's speculation that it'll keep becoming a more important aspect of how a company performs and operates. So there's carbon capture and carbon offsetting in that aspect. I have broadly classified what Uttam showed in the previous slide into different aspects on the efficiency potential for optimization. Design changes for the vessel specifically, of course. Design changes and alternate energy can improve the efficiency by up to 50%, but design changes for a vessel, as you can understand, is a very significant capital investment. It requires money, of course, time, effort, because you have to go back to the vessel's lines plan and design and start drawing the lines plan again, understanding the hull form. It's a very extensive process and also an expensive process. So it may not be for all ships or ship owners. So for example, if a vessel is over 15 years old or 20 years old, it doesn't make sense to invest such a high capital expense on that particular vessel, because the returns, I mean, shipping at the end of the day is a business. So you always try to find out what returns you get for investment. So it may not make much sense. So that's where operational aspects like weather routing, speed optimization, things like that come in. And there's also vessel optimization and energy saving devices where we talk about retrofits, and all of those things come in as well. At this point, I'd ask Gaurav to take a poll. Captain Gaurav, please.
Sure. You can see the poll on your screen, and poll is: what is the primary objective of the energy efficiency design index? Um, it's an interesting invest a lot, which is essentially in design changes. That's the time when you'll be able to get 50% of the savings is what you're saying. I mean, that's where the maximum potential is to save. Rest everywhere else, the potential is not so much.
Yep.
Yeah, but what about 50% of you who have voted? I'll wait for another couple of 3 to 5 seconds before I close this poll. Okay, ending the poll and sharing results. So say about the maximum answers are for point B, to set a minimum energy efficiency level per capacity mile. So you may want to delve a little bit more on this side.
So on the EDI aspect, it is more about, I feel, understanding the vessels on the design aspect. So for per ton mile may, I think, come on the energy efficiency operational index part, which is the EEOI, because there it depends on how much cargo you carry on your vessel and what sort of trade you're doing. But on the design aspect, it's more about setting a target for your vessel and trying to attain the target. And then that's where things like engine power limitation come up, because once you get your rating for your vessel, if it doesn't comply on the emission standpoint, then you have to make design modifications, which again, the easiest one is set up the engine power limitation. So it's more of the engine capability, but
All right.
Any thoughts on this, Mr. Uttam?
Now, you pointed it very rightly, Sai. So B is definitely not an answer. It is mainly on the operation side. So whether you measure it EOI or CII, they are more on the per capacity mile or or the cargo they carry. So EEDI mainly takes care of the design aspect, not on the operation aspect.
Right. All right, Pratik, can we have the next slides, please? Okay, so there are various technologies available in the market to control the emissions from your vessel, either directly control emissions by using alternate fuels that don't have so much carbon dioxide or have lower levels of carbon dioxide, to controlling the fuel consumption, basically increasing the vessel's efficiency by reducing fuel consumption and thereby reducing the carbon emission. So it depends on the owners to choose what kind of technologies they want to implement on a vessel, depending on the different factors like the age of the vessel, the trade, what's the capital expense for investing a particular technology. Uh, a very descriptive profiling of each vessel is done to understand what was the trade pattern, how much is the emission, how much is the fuel consumption. And from there, companies, they go about suggesting what technologies can be invested and what would be the return of investment for the specific technology, and what are the long-term benefits of technologies like this. But I think one thing to point out here is the first thing that I mentioned, the data quality, because every dollar of taxation or every dollar of expense that goes towards any of the regulatory or the compliance aspects starts with the data that was reported from the vessel, because that's where all the calculations happen. So it is very important to focus on the data quality, and then there inadvertently it comes down on the workload of the ship staff to improve on reporting, constantly monitor, constantly report, because a lot more information is required for the regulatory bodies like IMO and EU to collect a lot of information and verify. So which is where technologies like automatic data loggers come in place, where apart from increasing accuracy or increasing the quality of data, they also assist reducing the workload on the ship staff, because on a given day, on any given day for that matter, there's a lot going on the vessel, and burdening ship staff with reporting only makes it difficult for them. So integration with noon reporting and sensor data monitoring is beneficial to the crew, because then they have to spend lesser time and data reporting and work more on whatever their actual job is. I mean, data reporting is one part of it, but the rest of the job, because there are, of course, tasks which require attention, full attention from the crew. And this is something where we at GeoServe have also taken cognizance, and we are working on something, a concept or a reporting tool where our motto is one vessel, one form. Basically, the idea is, as most of you know, every vessel ends up reporting 4 or 5 different forms, depending on all the stakeholders involved in a particular charter, for the charterer, for the technical manager, for the ship owner. So the idea is to unburden the ship staff as much as we can. So we take one data source, and then on the shore side, we figure out technologies or methods where the respective data goes to whoever requires it. And then we have design changes, which are again capital heavy, capital intensive, where you have to do a lot of hull form designing, hull form assessment, take ships to dry dock, invest in a lot of steel. So bulbous bow, for example, modifying a bulbous bow or adding a bulbous bow is a time consuming and highly cost intensive project. So there are also technologies for hull efficiency. Basically, you use good anti-fouling systems where there are a lot more proactive than being reactive, and use things like silicon paints where they keep the fouling to the minimum, then use flow stream ducts that improve the flow around the hull. To improve propulsive efficiency, there are technologies like the PBCF, counter-rotating propellers, rudder bulbs, etc. Operational efficiency is something that goes on the operations side, which Captain Bosco will be talking about in just a little bit. And you can also improve efficiency on the machinery by implementing different technologies. One is the power and SFOC optimization of the main engine, then implementing shaft generators so that your power requirement is met, then engine power limitation. Although it's not about improving efficiency, but it's more of reducing your emissions. So I just put it in the emission optimization. And uh, the up and coming technologies like air lubrication, the wind and rotor sails, that basically help reduce your fuel consumption, and then that reduces your carbon dioxide emission. So alternate fuels are something that have now vessels started using already, but some things like ammonia being used as a fuel or hydrogen fuels are under still testing and trial phases. So it might be just a little while by the time they become commercially viable. But biofuels and LNG are something that are already in the market and in use by different vessels. Pratik, can we go to the next slide, please? Right. So coming back to, so this is the last slide I have. I just thought we'll do some, I took a real-time voyage from Fujairah to Rotterdam and just give you a little idea about how the emissions are going to impact the business for charterers, for vessel owners, and for vessel owners. If something impacts vessel owners, then obviously it'll impact the crew on the vessel. So how all of our lives as part of the shipping industry get impacted because of all the regulations that are coming up. So scenario one is I've taken a one voyage from Rotterdam to Fujairah, where the sailing speed is about 12 and a half knots, for example, and that takes about 36 days to go around the Cape because of all the situations in the Red Sea. Most vessels we see now today are sailing around the Cape to go from Middle East to Europe, which increases the expenses, increases time, consumption, everything. But it is what it is. So in the scenario one, this is a non-scrubber vessel. I've under HFO, basically the vessel I assumed the vessel is consuming VLSFO. So for the 36 days of sailing at about 25 metric tons a day, consumption comes to about 900 tons. And I've taken 1 day of ECA sailing to get into Rotterdam. So that's 25 tons of MGO and 875 tons of VLSFO, the 0.5% sulfur fuel. So for the EU ETS, the regulation states that if you're sailing into EU from outside the EU region for a cargo operation, 50% of the consumptions are liable to be taxed. So that's why I've taken 50% of the sailing consumption. And if you're doing a cargo operation inside an EU port, then all the emissions or all the consumption in the particular port, 100% has to be accounted for the ETS calculation. So I've taken that as well. I've added a fuel cost, rough fuel cost, average fuel cost of $580 per ton for the VLSFO and $750 a ton for LSMGO. So your total fuel cost comes to just a little close to $550,000. And for this particular voyage, the EU ETS exposure is a little very close to 77,000 US dollars. I've converted from euro to USD. So that's why everything is in dollars. And the fuel EU penalty. So EU ETS exposure is basically even relevant today because for all the EU voyages that the vessels perform in 2024 are also liable to be taxed. But I've taken, just to show this example, the emission exposure for 2025. So EU regulation also states that for the year 2024, if you remember, the 50% of the voyage emission I was talking about after all calculations, 40% of that calculation goes into the taxation part into calculating EUAs. That's a little complicated calculation. But for 2025, it is going to be 70% of your emission. And from 2026 onwards, it is 100% of your emission is liable to be taxed. So for 2025, if I consider 24, the amount would have been a little lower for the ETS exposure. And for 2026, it will be a little higher. But we'll just stick to 2025. And fuel leave penalty, which is going to start from next year, is about $30,500. So your total exposure for the voyage is close to $650,000 sailing across the Cape to go from Fujairah to Rotterdam. Now I take a second scenario where instead of the 0.5%, heavy sulfur fuel, we take a B30, which is a biofuel, which has 30% inorganic component and 70% of the fossil fuel. So there are different types of biofuels in the market today. So B30, there's B20, B24, depending on what is available in different ports. It basically represents what component of the fuel is the bio component, basically the FAME component, and how much whatever remaining is basically could be based on HFO or VLSFO or MGO. So there, if you can see the fuel cost, I just changed the high sulfur fuel to B30, and the fuel cost goes up from $580 to $710 per metric ton. So that has increased the fuel cost by just over a little bit over $110,000. And now, if you see, the ETS exposure has reduced because EU ETS, EU says that any quantity of biofuel will not be taxed. So if you burn, so in the B30, which is 30% of the 437.5 tons that are considered for taxation, is tax-free. If you use biofuel, there's no tax. So which is why the EU ETS exposure has reduced. And fuel EU exposure here is actually penalty. I'll just tell you a little bit about the fuel EU. So while the ETS is a tax, fuel EU works on a penalty or a surplus mechanism. Basically, what EU ETS does is they calculate what was the consumption, from there the emission, and then you're taxed based on the emission. So if your vessels emit less, you pay less, and if they emit more, you pay more. I mean, at the end of the day, you still have to pay the tax for emission because you'll always emit carbon dioxide because if you run your vessel. Fuel EU, the concept of fuel EU is slightly different, where all calculations are done based on the energy of the fuel that you're burning. And for different types of fuel, the energy limits are different, and because of which, if you burn, and energy basically gets derived from, sorry, I'm going to go a little bit technical here. The energy component comes from basically the carbon and the organic matter present in the fuel, because for fossil fuels. So there are alternate fuels where you can also burn them, but there's no or very little carbon dioxide emission. So for every metric ton of fuel that you burn, energy calculations are done, and from there the fuel EU penalty or surplus is calculated. I would like to get into more detail, but keeping in the interest of time, I'll just skip this, but you can do your own research. A lot of documentation and guidance is available on the market today and on the internet, of course. So what happens here is if you burn a biofuel, then if you see for the scenario 1, there's a penalty, while for the scenario 2, there's a surplus. Because you're burning biofuel, you're at an advantage, and it is by a significant sum. So where you get surplus for one vessel, it can be shared between different vessels that you own, and also with different owners can pool their vessels to trade the fuel EU. So that is one advantage of the fuel EU, where you will not always end up in the red. There are also chances that depending on what fuel you burn, you are able to stay in a surplus and then offset and basically negate any penalty that you're paying. So the total exposure there has dropped to under $100,000. So for these two scenarios, if you see, while the fuel cost has increased a little bit uh, by about $113,000, the fuel EU ETS has reduced because you burnt biofuel. The fuel use surplus has increased quite a bit, and your overall exposure for the same voyage has reduced by about $500,000, which is a very significant amount of money for any voyage, or for that matter, for any P&L. So we can always connect more on this, or there's a lot of regulation available, but I'm sure Captain Gaurav will also arrange a lot of sessions going forward on this, which we can probably discuss then. But yeah, this is what I wanted to just point out, that doing a simple switch from a fossil fuel to a biofuel would impact the P&L so much. Pratik, next slide, please.
I think while we are on this slide, I think there's
Yeah.
while we take the question at the end, but because it's related to this slide, maybe we could take that question and um, um, if you could elaborate on the fuel EU penalty once, Sai.
Yeah. So
We go back to the slide, previous slide, Pratik. Yeah.
right. So basically, the fuel EU is a regulation that the EU came up with to promote the use of renewable fuels, basically sustainable fuels that. So if you all know, I mean, or you must be knowing that all fossil fuels are non-renewable. Once they go extinct, once you run out of fossil fuels, there's no way you can generate back. But biofuels are something that are man-made, synthetic fuels from bio waste or from different things like that. So all these things are renewable sources of energy where they can be created and then used. And then because they are man-made, sometimes they don't, or sometimes they have very little component of carbon dioxide. So for every fuel that you burn, you either release much lesser carbon dioxide or no carbon dioxide at all. So in order to promote the use of biofuels, fuel EU, European Union has come up with the fuel EU uh, penalty or the surplus concept. Now, why there's a flip side to this, because as of today, the biofuels are not very extensively available. Their availability is limited to certain ports right now, and it is going to take a little bit of time for them to be commercially viable and extensively available across the globe. So this is something that you have to find a balance on uh, how it benefits your operations. So that's a call for commercial teams and the vessel owners to take. I also saw one more question just now, that ETS benefits only biofuel or for LNG fuel. So Rahul, EU ETS benefits are only applicable to biofuel because LNG still has a carbon component. So while the carbon emission factor for high sulfur fuel is 3.112, LNG is 2.5, but there's still some carbon component in LNG. So ETS does not give benefit for LNG, only non carbon based fuels.
All right. Thanks. This was very impactful, very insightful, Sai. Thank you. So
Thank you.
just by changing of fuel, while there is an immediate cost involved, as I see about $100,000 more, but you reduce the exposure by $500,000. So, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for this slide.
Thank you. I'll now hand over to Captain Bosco to take, or before we take that, we can take the poll. Thank you.
Yep. So there's a poll on your screen right now, and the poll is on which of the following retrofitting options can help reduce a ship's energy consumption by optimizing propulsion. If you should have the four answers. Pratik, you can stop sharing, and maybe Captain Bosco can now then share his screen.
So Gaurav, can you hear me? Can you hear and see the screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's wait for the last 3 to 5 seconds before we stop the poll. Okay, ending the poll, sharing results. Sai, your views on this? I think the overwhelming people have voted for option number 1.
Sorry, I'm not able to see the poll. Just a moment.
So they say that the propeller fin pause caps
Yeah,
is the
okay. I
maximum,
mean,
83%.
so I think it was very straightforward question, and yeah, so the PBCFs contribute to, which we had done a study recently, and they contribute to between 3 to 5% in increasing the efficiency of the vessel by way of optimizing the flow. So yeah, this is the audience's answer here.
All right, thanks. Thanks for your presentation, Sai, and over to you, Captain Bosco.
Thank you.
Okay. So can I? Okay. Okay. Great. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Gaurav, for inviting me here. Thank you, Sai, Uttam. I think you have presented quite a lot on basically everything on vessel performance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you all through what we actually do back end, or what is actually happening ashore with vessel performance, especially when somebody from sea or the naval architects or things like that, when they come ashore, what happens, what exactly do they do, and how do we manage vessel performance from shore side. I will also the operations perspective is a perspective which is at a very low cost compared to installing anything or doing some kind of retrofits or and things like that. It's more a day-to-day kind of work. It's more working with data, working with insights, and also you lose using a lot of perspective from what you've already done on ship before. Okay, and so it's a complete different world. It's everything what Mr. Uttam and Sai has mentioned, but putting it into practice on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so I'm just going to share a video next, and do let me know if you can hear and see anything, and then after this we'll discuss on this. Yeah, can you hear the video before I continue?
Yeah, we can.
Great, thank you.
We care for the environment. We are a carbon neutral company, but we didn't stop there. So in 2019, Anglo Eastern partnered with Wärtsilä Force across our managed vessels. Our vision was to improve crew awareness on vessel performance and assist our partners to reduce their carbon footprints. In July 2021, this led to forming a dedicated performance team to monitor all the vessels under Fleet Operations Solutions. We decided to leverage the power of data along with the extensive knowledge and understanding across our fleets. So let me take you behind the scenes. The AFPC team is a team of 14 performance experts. They have been in senior management positions on board the ships and have expertise in nautical and the technical part of the on-shipboard operations. They are supported by 2 data engineers and analysts.
Hi, I'm part of the voyage optimization team. We ensure that all our voyages are carried out efficiently in terms of route optimization, speed optimization, trim optimization, as well as charter party compliance. We have open discussions with our masters, vessel operators, operations team, and give them the best possible information that we have using the tools that we have here at AFPC.
I'm part of a team that is looking into hull and machinery performance optimization. Our core job here is to ensure that the engines are being operated at the optimized levels. We are also looking at boiler and auxiliary engine overutilization. When it comes to hull optimization, we are ensuring that the hull fouling is being identified at the earliest stage so that we can take early action. With regards to the owners, we are supporting our owners by providing CI forecasting, analyzing data as and when required, and also initiating several projects into energy efficiency improvement.
At AFPC, we monitor close to 512 ships. We also analyze almost 30 million data points every year. This has helped us in deep diving into the vessel's performance and also look at the carbon footprint of the vessel. I'm quite happy to say that in last 1 year alone, we had been able to reduce the carbon footprint almost by 14,000 metric tons.
Okay, so I think that gave you a good insight on the day-to-day one. So I just want to check again before I continue. You all can hear me now back again?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's something what we do on a day-to-day basis. No special tool or anything like this. It will be very symmetric throughout performance teams all over India or in the world. Technology is something which is a driver for all vessel performance teams to kind of enable them to do a lot in less. Okay, when I say a lot in less, I mean to say is that when we get all the data back from the ships, or when we get enough of data, one analyst can do a lot and handle a fleet, for example, rather than each vessel individually. Okay, so that's one important thing which performance teams do on a day-to-day basis. Okay, moving on. Sorry, going to the next slide. So as of today, my team basically handles around 572 ships, and the performance team is mainly you'll find it everywhere in three major sections. You'll find analysts, basically the guys who can handle data, who can do modeling, who can do a lot of data crunching. You have the technical teams who are engineers from the ships, and it can be all ranks of engineers depending on what kind of work is there in a performance team. And there's a lot of training involved, so people will be training the crew because they are the main stakeholders on who are really going to do the work basically. And with this and the other two teams will be the technical, as I said, for the engineers, but there is also a team of 5 or 6 people, for example, for this 572 ships, which are senior mariners. Okay, so they are actually being chief officers or masters on board the ships, and at any rank basically you can join these kind of voyage optimization teams, and I will take you through a little bit more in later on when I look into the marketplace. So this is the scale of information which is available. So if I look at 572 ships, we're talking about 24,000 voyages in a year. Okay, and if you look at the amount of ships which are there, more than 5,000 GT in the world, we're almost touching 24 to 25,000 ships. So imagine how much is there to do, and that's basically the power of scale which I wanted to bring across. Now, how do we actually do it? And this is actually a very basic technology. I think my colleague Uttam also spoke about it in the start. And it's something which is called modeling or digital twins. And I'm going to keep it very basic because I'm not a very technical guy in any case. So basically what we do is this concept has come from the industries. Okay, so in the industries, so say there was a big power plant somewhere, and they would always create a virtual model of it and try and keep on feeding in data from this power plant, and after some time, when there's enough of data, they're able to make a model and understand that if something is going wrong or something is not going wrong. Okay, so there are different models. One is like a ML model, which is machine learning model, and there is a simulation models, which I think most of us have done when we do simulation courses, right? The model of the ship is actually built into that simulator. So when you are actually when you simulate heavy weather, you can actually feel seasick, right? So it is the same thing, and but it is made more from the vessel performance aspect. So when we look at it, when we look at digital twins, or we look at these kind of ways of monitoring, is nothing but creating a benchmark on of the vessel or a machinery or a voyage, okay, and then working to improve that benchmark, right? So if you've got a hull at which has just come out of dry dock or just come out of a nice hull cleaning, that's your benchmark. And then as it degrades, what are you going to do to ensure that it doesn't degrade? That's first thing. And second thing, if it's degraded, what are you going to do about it? When are you going to do about it? So these are something which happen on a day-to-day basis, and it's very critical. And as you've seen in the graph which Sai has mentioned, it voyage optimization will touch about 10%, but handling your vessel optimization, which is your machineries, your hull, and that kind of stuff, is 25% of fuel savings which can be achieved at one point of time. Okay, so it's very critical, and that is what day-to-day teams do. So they keep on seeing how can we get these 25%. Okay, and on the routing end, so previously we are all used to seeing routing charts. Okay, so when we look at routing charts, it was exactly what we do now on our computer based systems. So routing charts are historical routes, and we had a nice line over there, right, which we could use, right? That was also created with vessels data or with data from the past, right? But now what is the new trend is to have the new AIS data which is coming in. We use that for 3-4 years, try to find out, okay, what are the best routes which are possible, the history of the company, what are the safety parameters the master wants to keep, and very different weather data models. Okay, so you have various data companies which are selling you weather data. You have, for example, WNI selling you data. You've got GFS. You've got so many data sources. So you will use all these sources, you will use all this data available, you will use the actual model of the ship, and then try to create a route basically which would be the most suitable for the vessel. Now, when I say suitable, there are four or five KPIs which any operator would have. The operators from a commercial team would like to have the most fuel efficient voyage or reach in time. The masters KPI would be definitely have the vessel with the best weather for his maintenance plus his crew safety and crew comfort. Then you've got then you've got the charterers who want to ensure that you basically spend the least amount of fuel. So all these KPIs also can be inbuilt, and there are variety of softwares available which can do this kind of work. And this is what teams on the back end here in all performance teams or all routing teams will be doing. Okay, so I think we've got a poll now. Gaurav, you would like to run it? Yeah. Okay, so there are two polls here. The first one is how much energy do you think weather routing can save? When we are looking at weather routing here, I'm talking about the whole weather optimization. Okay, so what do you think? How does the real time contribute? Okay, right. I think the results of this poll is very nice.
Encourage more of you to vote, please. We've got about 50% participation.
Okay, so I think maybe I'll start with the first one, which says
I'll
how.
just end the poll and share results with everyone then. And
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, I think it's so how does real-time weather routing contribute? And I can see the only one answer which is prevailing, which is 97%, and it is avoiding harsh weather conditions to reduce fuel consumption. Okay, so which is true. Definitely, this is one of the contributing factors. If you reduce avoiding harsh weather for fuel consumption, but it is also very important that uh, how much are you going to go. So for example, if you say I'm going to harsh weather, you will take everybody has different limits. So, and the ship is supposed to endure a certain amount of limits as well, so you can't really put a benchmark only on that. It is also very important that all optimization techniques which we use also will help to speed up the vessel. For example, taking the winds effects of winds and currents. That's what I was talking about before on the vessel models. Okay, so what we see is that the programs which we have, or the algorithms which are available in the market, they will keep on adjusting your route, or keep on adjusting your vessels kind of waypoints, so that it can get maximum benefits of the external factors. And that's something which is very critical now, considering the regulations like CII and which is mainly very operational, and you just want to keep on reducing your consumption and still do a lot more distance. Okay. Where the second question, in slow steaming, typical percentage reduction, I think most of them got right, 10 to 20%, but also depends on how much you have reduced, and if you really need to reduce. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav. Okay, so how do I go back? And okay. Okay, so then I'll continue. Yes, so if I was talking about routing now, if you look at this route, okay, the one in the black, right? And you will see that it's not traditionally a GC or a run line or things like that. And you will find that even though the fuel consumption will be almost the same, you will able to see that it is how it is taking benefits of the, for example, the weather from the stern, or it understands how the vessel behaves over a period of time. And this is where the digital twins of the ships are used over the period of time, where we are continuously seeking data from vessels. So you connect your vessel's ECDIS, for example, and your it and your engines. You can connect your various other all machinery on board. But when you connect your ECDIS and you get your speeds, you get your headings, you get your speed reductions which are happening, and you also have weather inputs from there, plus the weather inputs from the ship, you can create a model to understand for a cargo ship of this a particular cargo ship of say 100,000 metric tons, this shape, what kind of speed losses are they going to endure in a voyage. And this is exactly what is used for planning a next voyage using the model of that ship. How much has it degraded, how much can it can you get out of this voyage. And that is also a very practical approach, not just on theoretically on paper. So this is something which is happening on day to day, and of the benefit of connected chips. Now, when you look at this on the right hand side, you can see how an operator, a shore or an owner or a charterer, can immediately have a look and see at what power are you going at, what load are you going at. And when we collect data for like this, rather than only reported data, there's a lot more which can be done, because it's the frequency of reporting data is very, very quick, right? It's very, very fast, and there's a lot of data which is coming in. So similar to stock market trends, I think everybody who must be following, I'm not the one who follows, but you can see that how things are happening every second or every minute, right? The same thing which is applied to the ships. This is a dashboard of a ship's engine, right? So if you look at a ship's engine, from pressures to temperatures to each and everything, you can see. But what are you going to do with it is what a performance team with the backend is going to do. How are they going to compare? Are you going to compare ships are you going to see what load profiles they're going to go at? What is the SOFC of the engines compared to the rest of the ships? Is one exhaust gas temperature more than the other? What are the different units? So basically, you can do so many comparisons, and that's a reason you always will need a team who will have to implement any kind of solution. And that's one of the biggest market which is happening, and you can see what is happening in India. There are a lot of teams which are set up in the last 2 or 3 years. Coming to the marketplace, and I wish it is getting as crowded as this. The marketplace of vessel performance is majorly in 9 sections. And what I visualize it from what I know is, of course, the chartering and commercial teams. Okay, they are interested in people, they're interested in softwares, and which can help them get their KPIs or get their goals sorted out very easily. So they now can understand, they can get better revenue out of their whole voyage. Then you've got performance managers on the voyage end, the performance manager on the technical end who will analyze engines and things like that. And then the weather routing companies are still there, but now they are calling themselves as weather optimization companies, because it's not only weather routing per se what it was in the past, but it's also optimizing the weather, the whole route, compared to what it was before. And then there's a very big section on the product management part, where there are mariners and non-mariners who are basically looking at developing a tool which will be there on board, implementing that tool, designing, and also doing a lot of research on all these products. Okay, so this is also a very big space which is there, and people who are inclined to product management, it's a really fantastic avenue when you see something which is already made from from your inputs, okay, which benefits a larger population, right? It's quite fantastic. And then you have the environment compliance team, as Sai also mentioned. They will do the calculations for all your EXIs, your EDIs, your CIR ratings, your ETS statements, creating the IMO DCS plans, SEAM plans. So there's always an environment compliance space which is there, which looks at which looks at data from a compliance perspective. These teams are high on deadlines, very focused teams, because they are if there are financial liabilities in case there are some issues there. So it's a very critical team in most of the all companies, I would say. Then also you'll have a change management and implementation team, which is which space where there are people who will be training, who will be implementing, who will be ensuring that things are going well, and the customer success, basically that's one particular area. And training and research, which I don't think I need to touch upon, but training on digitalization and digital tools is now become very critical to the industry. And it's not only the ship staff or the people here, it's everyone who needs training on the on any kind of digitalization tools. And then you have got the driving force, the sales and marketing guys who will bring any product to market. And of course, if that is actually one of the most important steps, because once the product is to market, then it can be improved if required, but otherwise it's very difficult to test or kind of do any kind of work in that. So it's a very tough role, and this is one market space which is also available to explore for everyone. The monitoring system software, okay, is growing at 4.3%, but is going to reach about 12 billion or 11.5 billion. I can't round that up, sorry, 11.5 billion by 2030. And this is, of course, driven by a regulatory framework, which my colleagues have already taken, and they are just booming up. So there are so many softwares coming in. Along with that softwares, the expectations from performance teams are also quite high. There are a lot of tests being done on autonomous kind of or semi-autonomous vessels, where they're looking at creating a station where 4 or 5 ships can be handled at one time. Trials are going on mainly with European market, but we've got a very large talent pool here. So let me see if I can get an estimate of how many officers are there in the Indian market. It's published by DG Shipping. Okay, you can always use Google, but if you can put it on the chat and tell me how many officers do you think does the Indian Indian market have active as of today? Just an estimations. Anyone can put it on the chat? I think all are Googling. 20K. Thanks, Ashutosh. 1 lakh. Jyoti, very close.
Did you say officer? You also mean engineers, correct?
Yes. The whole
Present engineers. Yeah.
all officers, yeah. So very close to what Jyoti is saying, is about 1.12 lakh officers, as per DG Shipping in 2023. And of course, 2.5 lakh total seafarers. So we're not a very large chunk compared to the population of India, But there is going to be a huge void. And if you look at this same research paper which I've written here, Zion Market Research, where this snip is taken from, you'll able to see the void which is going to happen in Indian seafarers. Plus, of course, then since the talent pool is high, there's also a lot to do on shore here, right? So it's very interesting. Now, what are the skills really required, right, when for getting into performance space? So I was a QHSE guy. I got into performance space, and I think the skills that are required from a mariner is first maritime knowledge, and I think it's very important to be abreast of the latest regulations, what's going on in the market, and explore outside your vessel quite high if you're looking to jump into this kind of a space. So I've written over here a few skills which you can definitely read up, but to enter into this market, at least a minimum, a small amount of data analytic skills, problem solving and decision making comes automatic to all seafarers, I think, because that's what we love doing. Understanding a lot on the regulatory part, statistical modeling, programming, this comes in a little later, but it's a bonus if you know. So if you have time to kind of go through some courses, and these are the courses which I've written as bonus, is where you would like to focus on. But the rest of it, I think most mariners or people who have like naval arcs and everyone who have worked in the maritime industry have definitely already achieved. Of course, the naval arcs have already much more information than us. But yeah, so this is the general skill thing which we look at when we look at also interviews, or when we look at people who are trying to join in. And it's as simple as this. It's not very difficult. You're more to kind of support the vessels and the whole infrastructure of the maritime industry. Okay, so that's all for me. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the questions. And Gaurav, over to you.
Thank you so much, Captain John. I think very, very insightful. Couple of key takeaways for me from your session was mentioning about 32 million US dollar savings in terms of fuel reduction that you said. You mentioned about these 9 places, where the marketplace where where the opportunities are. So I mean that's a lot of opportunities. So thanks for that. Uh, so everyone who has questions, you can write it down in the chat window while I ask a couple of the same question to Sai and Uttam. What, as per you, Sai, are the skills that you look at when you hire a person in this space? And same to you, Uttam. Maybe Sai can come first and then Uttam.
Right. So most of the things, Gaurav, are like what Captain John mentioned, technical skills, where the first and foremost thing is understanding how vessels operate and how the trade is, how shipping is. That's minimum. But other than that, I mean, it depends from role to role. For example, I have the research and development team. I have a marine engineer in my team. I myself am a naval architect, but I also have a data scientist. So it depends on what you are trying to achieve and what role are you looking out for. But uh, with everything uh, moving towards digitalization, some of the soft skills on the technology part would be required. I would say are needed, not always required, but uh, they are preferred that you understand technology a little bit, are proficient with some tools like Microsoft Office, or sometimes in some cases, if you're applying for a data analyst or a performance analyst role, then it is good to have knowledge of Power BI, because you can't look at data in tons and tons of pages. There has to be some sort of visualization tool that you can develop for yourself so that you can get some insight out of the data and tell the same to a counterparty who is dependent on you to analyze the data. And uh, data science is now an up and coming thing. And I think I've seen a lot of marine engineers step onto the data science side, because with their knowledge of how ships and engines work, combining it with data science is a very, very interesting space. And it has a lot of applications, because there are now a lot of companies that do performance assessment and optimization. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Uttam, over to you.
This is a very pertinent question, Gaurav, and both John and Sai, you covered it very well. Means you definitely talked about all the hard skills that is needed, and that's what being a mariner, we are used to do that. But in today's digital and technology world, things are changing so fast. I think the one of the most critical skill is ability to learn new things and ability to be a change agent here, right? So that's what I normally look for. So of course these skills are very much needed, and ability to use it on a daily basis. So this is definitely what you said, whether data analytics or any course that you do in terms of digital proficiency and technology, it is very important. But ability to learn new thing is the key skill set. Means you need to have that growth mindset in order to keep learning and keep. Yesterday it was machine learning, today it is generative AI, tomorrow it can be something else, right? So you need to keep learning. And it's not about technology, it's also about the new regulations. So today it is IMO regulation, tomorrow it is ETS, the day after tomorrow it will be fuel EU, right? So you need to be aware, at the same time informed, and ability to keep learning. So I normally look for those, because I consider the marine engineer who comes, they come up with a technical skill. So otherwise, that's my takeaway. Means that's definitely I look for when I get any team member on board with my team.
Thanks.
But having said that, whatever the skill set that you mentioned, it's really needed. That's the baseline, definitely needed. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Right, so
One more thing I would add, Gaurav, Captain Bosco, you mentioned all the skills, and no, I will add one more job profile. I think the technical project manager is a key one. Whenever you do the retrofits and all those installation, I think having that marine engineering skill set along with the project management skill set is very good. And it's really, really need of the hour. So a lot of retrofits are happening, energy saving devices are being installed. So that is also a very good opportunity for the people who want to take a new role on shore.
Great. While we have more questions coming in, let me quickly, what is your opinion? And I'm going back to this slide. Where do we feel the maximum opportunities could come? If each of you have to pick up one of the area, where do you feel the maximum opportunities are going to come?
Maybe I will go first. I think on the chartering and commercial end will be the maximum because they'll always need voyage operators. But now with voyage operators, it's become a kind of a dual kind of role, which they're also looking at a lot of performance and stuff like that at the same time. So I think that will be the biggest one, and then followed by performance managers and owners and all the other companies. But I think chartering and commercial, because there's the highest impact on money is over there, so I guess it's going to be there.
So, which essentially means that all of this is not regulatory driven; it's actually all commercial driven.
Yes. So yes, that's true. It's highly commercial driven more than the regulatory, because at one point of time it is, they will increase the freight rate or the levy a tax, but cargo has to reach when the cargo has to reach. So yeah.
Sure. Sai, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I think again, because I work on the commercial side in the service industry, of course, but it's still on the commercial aspect. I agree that it all boils down to
the second one, then that's the first one, then the
Yeah.
second is where you.
So then I would say on the product management side, and then on the vessel performance, and then on the environmental compliance, because everything, even though there are regulations, shipping, I mean, very candidly, without any offense to any of you, everything that happens in shipping is driven by dollar. So only because there's a dollar value impact on shipping on all of these environmental regulations, it's now taken so much spotlight. So product management and compliance and vessel performance.
Thank you. Uttam?
Yeah, it's very hard to pick for me. But as rightly said, no, it's driven by dollar. The number of vessel performance managers with all these optimized tools or route optimization, the number of people required to do those jobs probably will reduce. That's my take. But at the same time, more opportunities will come. So having being on the vendor side or on the company side, I see the requirement for the change management and implementation, training and research is also very much growing. So because you'd have a lot of solutions that you mentioned, Captain Bosco, but getting it implemented, getting the value realized is the key, and we need more change management and change agent in the company.
All right. Thank you for your insights. Yeah, Vineet had a question on should marine engineers opt for data science or big data? It's the same thing. All right, Devender, okay. Let me just read out his question. He's working as an auditor in a leading organization. We receive a lot of data from many certified IT systems, but we do all calculations manually. There is always a difference. Okay, that is a comment, sorry. Okay, if you had to suggest a particular course for people to at least start, understanding more of this, what's the one course which you may want to suggest? And considering that people don't understand a lot of coding, a lot of data analysis, what's the first thing that you might want to suggest?
Are you talking about a ready-made course? Means in terms of what?
Yeah, I mean, a ready-made course, or maybe if I can talk about a skill or which you may want a person to get that particular skill, and that skill will lead to a course, and those could be many courses which get you that skill.
Okay, I can go first. I think both Captain Bosco and Sai mentioned about it. Data analytics is very important. Understanding how the data works and what are the data processing and the goes behind the scene, and of course using different tools to present the data and get insight is the key. In all the roles that Captain Bosco mentioned. This is very important to make the data-driven decision for yourself and also explaining it to your users. So I think that is the one key skill set that I see coming out from this.
Okay. John, you want to go next? It's the same thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with Uttam. It's absolutely the same.
All right. Sai?
Yeah, so apart from what Uttam mentioned and John agrees, which basically I agree, data science, data analytics is something they'll have to start with. I mean, there are courses with coding, there are courses without coding as well. For somebody who is not so proficient, they can start with just using tools like Power BI, which are fairly simple, and you can play around a little bit. But I also feel some crash course or basically something that tells you or updates you on all the new regulations is also very important, because if you are trying to enter into the vessel performance space, you can definitely expect questions on emissions and regulations on that aspect. So keeping up with the regulations is also an important aspect if you're trying to come to the show side on the performance side.
Right. Just while we are on it, I may just want to update the audience that C and Beyond, we have a course on maritime focused Excel and BI, and we are doing a webinar on it next week. So I've just put in the link of that course on the chat window for you to see. I'll take Ashok's question next. You said more opportunities in commercial. How about entry? Which course to do? Again, Ashok, connect to us on education@cnbeyond.com, and we have a couple of courses which we could tell you, or you could also look at ICS. That's Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers. If you do a course from there, you can get an entry into commercial shipping. Darvesh has a question, and I'll leave the CTC out of it, Darvesh, and it's a very specific, very specific question to you, and maybe I'll ask Uttam, maybe if you could take it. A second
I thought you
engineering.
will take it one to one.
Actually, I would have wanted to take it one to one, but I know there are a lot of people who would have the similar question, honestly. So that's the reason I thought that let's take it over here. And maybe, you know, a generic one, of course, Darvesh, you'll have to do your own, you know, you'll have
Yeah,
to research,
yeah.
but a generic at a generic level, which one, what do you feel?
See, it is all about what you want to do the rest, right? Means we cannot make a decision for you. It's what your interest lies, where you see, you know, what you like working. But of course, being a dual fuel engineer, I think your skill set is in high demand. And going forward, it will be of high demand. So moving from from engineer to the voice optimization analyst, probably the company that you may be working for, they will ask you, okay, you help me here, or you help me, there is an opportunity there. So I see that there will be more requirement and training requirement for dual fuel. So it's totally up to you what you want, whether you want to be a vessel manager and do the vessel day-to-day operations, or you want to learn something new. So I can't make a decision for you, but what you know, I think your skill set is in high demand at this point. Yeah, I see a very interesting question from Payal here, Gaurav, right? Can a non-mariner get an opportunity in performance? 110%. You know, there is, of course, you need to understand machinery. Not needed to be a marine engineer or a mariner at all. I have a team member who is an aviation engineer, and he's one of the best performance engineer in my team. So and of course there are other people who come from different industry, does not have an engineering background, but they learned and they become a great performance analyst. So there is definitely an opportunity. You just need to have a zeal to learn new things and you know, have that data analytics mindset to work with.
Not to forget, we've got Sai over here, who's a non-mariner.
Yeah, naval architect also.
Naval
Yes.
architect, of course. But yeah, also, if you don't understand shipping as naval architects, you of course understand shipping. Even if you don't, we've also seen a lot of you know, data analysts getting an entry into this.
Maybe I can add, Gaurav. Maybe, you know, if they're not not even naval arcs, but if you are high on data analytics skills, we've done data science and things like that, the performance industry is definitely looking for you. But if you want to get into core, then courses like the ICS, as he's mentioned, and plus the NMMS course, which is there, you know, which is a lot on maritime. If you want to understand the core of it, the business, then you can do that. But otherwise, most of the analysts or people who are doing a lot of data science are highly required in this field.
All right. Don't see any more questions coming in. All right. Okay. Let me then go and take a couple of polls. 1 second. Okay. Now, after hearing all the conversations, does this field really interest you? Yes, no, you need more information. And would you be keen on enrolling for a course on all or any one of these topics? The idea is that See and Beyond, we are looking at places where the industry is looking for talent and where the candidates would want to go, and maybe we may want to develop a course, but basis the feedback that we get from the industry, we might get into a course.
So Gaurav, there's one question from Prateek on scope 1 and scope 2. So
Yeah.
basically, Prateek, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 have very specific definitions, and depending on who is the stakeholder you're talking about, that definition changes. Basically, that perspective changes. For a vessel owner, scope 1 emission is the emission from the vessels. Scope 2 is, for example, all the travel that the employees of the company do, and scope 3 is associated with the vendors who are working with the organization. For a charterer, the vessels that they hire become the scope 2. So basically, it's very uh, depends on who you're talking to and what are you talking about. So there's a lot of literature available, and I think if you read about that, that will probably give you an understanding. But for charterers, emissions from vessels become scope 2 because they don't own the assets, they hire those assets. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sai. All right, maybe a couple of more answers to the poll while we take one question from Pawan. What changes will do if AAQS will play along? Sorry, I don't understand this, but who would want to
Is
take?
it about the air quality? Means I'm not aware. I can't understand the question. And
I
maybe
don't know
you
what
can mention.
AAQS means, honestly. Pawan, you want to speak up? Okay, it's air quality itself. That's what he said.
Yes, sir. I would like to speak. These air quality system or exhaust gas systems, cleaning systems. So basically, we are speaking about very low sulfurs. I agree with the point where 0.5 sulfur is there. But AQS will also do a calculation on these high sulfurs where the cost cutting and reduction of air emissions are less. As per I have worked for a couple of years on these AQS. Yes, I have seen SO2 and CO2 ratios lowered quite a bit. How come it will change the scenarios here?
May I take that question? Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, Pawan, the AQS, if you're talking about scrubbers or the catalytic reduction systems, they only so far reduce the SOx and NOx, nothing significant on the CO2 emissions. So, but it is good to also because right now the fuel EU maritime that I was talking about just a little while ago, it calculates the greenhouse gas intensity. So as of today, there's only the carbon component, but eventually going forward, there's also be going to be the methane and the nitrous oxide component. So having a catalytic reactor installed, the SCRs installed, would reduce the nitrous oxide emissions, but not in the quantum. They are so little when compared to the carbon dioxide emission that they don't really give a significant commercial impact, but it's more of a regulatory aspect that ships have to adhere to.
Sir, but it goes with the greenhouse gases, right? So it will all come under the same phase because now CO2 percentage is somewhere around 0.03 percentage. So, but SO2 and sulfur trioxide and SO4s are a bit higher than what we see. So it all contributes to greenhouse gases. So how it goes with?
So for the maritime, like I said, it's a regulatory aspect. If ships would install those to cater to the regulatory requirement, but otherwise for the larger industry, I think that is something we'll have to see how it shapes up.
Thank you, sir.
All right, guys, sharing the result of the last poll and so I mean any such participation if it interests or if you are unsure or if it is not interesting you, right? Or you're not getting a lot of interest, that's also a good thing because you know that whether you like to go on this side or you wouldn't want to go over here. So to the guys who's answered yes or no, I think that's a good thing. To the guys who need more information, write to us on education@cnbeyond.com. Let's see if we can help you with any more information as well. And I see a lot of you who'd like to take up a course on this, and let's see if we can develop something which is better for the industry. And let me take the final poll on the feedback, expectations and feedback, and were your expectations met with the session? Was the session useful to you, and how would you rate the session?
So we will get the report card immediately, right, Gaurav?
Yeah, more in a way whether we were able to communicate what we wanted to, deliver over here. And please feel free to write any improvements that you may want, anything extra that you may want. I think that'll be very, very helpful for all of us.